during the Second World War, news of atrocities in occupied Europe were sent to the British government by various means. Early on, reports came from embassies and consulates across Europe. After outbreak, intelligence was passed to the British government by British and Allied agents and resistance organisations, with networks operating across Europe. Towards the end of the war, more detailed information of the brutality of the Nazi regime reached Britain. But ultimately, it was the survivor testimonies which told the world of the massacres of Jews, of deportations to death camps and concentration camps, and of the brutal treatment which individuals performed on other human beings. On November 1st, 1943, during the Moscow Conference, the three foreign ministers of Britain, America and Russia signed the Three-Power Declaration, which included the Declaration of Atrocities, the fourth element of the Moscow Declarations. Speaking in the interest of the 32 United Nations, they declared as follows: at the time of granting of any armistice to any government which may be set up in Germany, those German officers and members of the Nazi Party who have been responsible for or have taken a consenting part in the above atrocities, massacres and executions will be sent back to the countries in which their abominable deeds were done, in order that they may be judged and punished according to the laws of those liberated countries and of the free governments which will be created therein. The United Nations War Crimes Commission was created on October the 20th, 1943, at a meeting in the Foreign Office. Its first and main task was to collect evidence of war crimes from any of the Allied governments, and then consider which methods the Allies would use for the trial and punishment against nationals of the United Nations. This meant collecting, recording and assessing all available evidence of atrocities. The threat of reprisals by the Allies made no significant impact on the Nazi regime. On January the 27th, 1945, the Russian army liberated Auschwitz, Auschwitz-Birkenau and its surrounding camps. A few months later, Frank Roberts at the Foreign Office received a telegram from his Russian counterpart, Wyszynski, with details of the atrocities committed there. Governments in exile were recording German crimes against their Jewish citizens since before 1943 and informing the British and American governments of these atrocities. By June 1944, the United Nations War Crimes Commission had collected just 70 individual cases, a very low number, and partly constrained by them, requesting information which was too specific. Reports of mass murders did not necessarily include individual names for which a conviction could be issued. Petitioning by Jewish organisations to have the annihilation of the Jewish people treated as a separate count in court was rejected, but the indictment was included under Count 3, that of war crimes, and also under Count 4, crimes against humanity. The British Army on the Rhine was formed for the second time in August 1945. It was reformed to control the districts which were running the military government of the British zone of Allied occupied Germany. The War Crimes Section, based at their headquarters, was given the task to investigate alleged war crimes in northwest Europe. The trial methods had been discussed at Yalta in February 1945 and again at the Potsdam Conference later that year, in readiness for the International Military Tribunals, which began on November the 17th, 1945, at the Palace of Justice in Nuremberg. These trials brought the main conspirators of Hitler's Third Reich to stand before an international court. Throughout the trials, British investigators based in Germany were tracking, arresting, and interrogating individuals. Back in 1942, the Auxiliary Territorial Service for Women formed a Provost section. This was part of the military police, and soldiers from these units were often sent to hunt down the accused on the streets of German towns. They collected evidence from witnesses against SS guards and their accomplices. One specific camp was of particular interest to the British, the women's camp known as Ravensbrück. Over 130,000 women prisoners were held here during the course of its 6-year existence. Between 30 and 50,000 were murdered. Inmates at Ravensbrück were also tortured and experimented on, mainly by brutal women and male guards. The Jugendlager indicated here was situated just a few hundred yards from the camp. This is where girls under the age of 18 were held until their sudden evacuation in January 1945. The camp was liberated by the Russians on April the 30th, 1945. Situated an hour out of Berlin, Ravensbrück was in the Russian military zone. The Russians showed little concern in the cases against the staff of Ravensbrück, but the British had their own reasons in bringing these perpetrators to justice. Vera Atkins, an intelligence officer in the Special Operations Executive, made it her mission to discover the fate of her agents, a number of who were executed at Ravensbrück. Much of her investigations informed the British of what happened here. The Ravensbruck trials took place in the Kurhaus in Hamburg. They began early December 1946 and continued through to 1948. A series of papers held by John de Cunha and gifted by him to the National Archives in 2005 give invaluable insight into the history of Ravensbrück and to the crimes committed there. A young soldier and law graduate, de Cunha was assigned the task of investigating the war crimes. He acted first as an investigator and then as a legal assistant at the trial of those accused. His collection includes photographs taken during the trial, copies of drawings showing conditions in Ravensbrück made by a prisoner in the camp, Violet Lecoq, a copy of the investigation report, statements made by witnesses to war crimes, including a number not produced as evidence in the trial. A set of chilling photographs exist as part of this collection. It is in one of these photographs that I was to identify Barbara Mason. Despite standing in the back row of the dock, you can see her clearly wearing the distinctive uniform of the Auxiliary Territorial Service. A chance encounter by the Education and Outreach team here at the National Archives with Barbara gave me the unique opportunity to make contact, and she invited me to meet her at her home. When she opened the door of her flat, I instantly recognised her. Despite being over 90 years old, she appeared as tall as in her photograph. Impeccably dressed, she warmly invited me in. We both agreed that we would not speak about the witness depositions, and as we quickly settled into conversation, it became apparent that I would leave with an extraordinary story about a humble Yorkshire girl who simply just wanted to join up.
And then I wanted to join the army, so I went to the dole and I said I was 17. And on the Friday I was in the army. Within a week I was in the army. And that's where I learned how to work the radar. But it was all a hush-hush, all very small, because it was only just starting. We had to pass all our exams and everything, for that. And then we went on to gun sites, and we travelled all around the coast, on different gun sites and that. And then we went on a gun site in Louvain in Brussels, and it was terrible. It was ground where the men had fought before, and so it was all marked foul ground, and we only had a cup of water a day.
In January 1943, she was accepted into the Women's Provost, a unit responsible for policing within the armed forces. The training was designed to teach unarmed self-defence, to give policewomen self-confidence, but also so that they may be self-reliant in an emergency.
Then the war finished in Europe, and then we got asked to go for this special duty, and we went to Sennelager in Germany. We did our training, Sennelager. That's where I did my training for the military. And then when we came from there, we went as guards for the prisoners for Ravensbrück. We weren't allowed to speak to them or anything, and we couldn't, they could do what they liked to us, say what they liked, but we couldn't retaliate. Every word was translated in every language that was sitting in the hall. Went on for months and months. We never saw the daylight because it was dark when we went in the morning, and it was dark when we came out at night. They said it was a special duty that we had to volunteer for and we were going to be trained for. But they didn't tell us it was for concentration camps or anything like that. We couldn't listen to it at first. We used to have to go in, like with the hospital, go in and stand, then walk out. You used to feel sick. You're crying all the time because you couldn't stand to hear it.
At this point, I decided to ask Barbara whether she was comfortable about commenting on any of the prisoners. She remembered the names very clearly and asked me to pass her the images that I had brought with me.
The one in the fur coat on the corner.
That's Maury.
Carmen Maury. She's always talking to her solicitor. No, that's her. That's her, yes, that's her. That's Carmen Maury. Now, she was, I think she was having an affair with Dr. Triter, the first doctor on the front there, because they both committed suicide. And Vera Salvacor, she got hung. That's when they're getting the sentence. That's him, Dr. Triter. And him and Maury were lovers also, and they commit suicide. And my husband was on the firing squad for the men, but nobody knows who has the shot. They're all blanks, you know. That's Vince, and that's Margaret Muse. They weren't hostile to us at all. I just can't really remember what I did feel. You know, I can't. I know I was absolutely disgusted. Absolutely, what's the word?
Traumatised by?
But yes, by what you heard and that and things what you heard, and you thought of those poor women and that sort of thing. But I can't remember really feeling anything. I can't remember what I did feel really. I can't ever feel looking at them and saying, "Oh, you're horrible." It's funny, isn't it? I can't remember what I felt or anything, but I must have felt very sad against them because of what they did.
Barbara's demob papers read, "Has given service as a policewoman, is intelligent and trustworthy." They describe her military conduct as exemplary. She and her husband left post-war Britain and emigrated to South Africa to find work. But not long after settling into their new life, Barbara was widowed, and so she returned with her 5 children to the United Kingdom. She told me that she did not speak often about her memories of the trials, and then only did so when asked. She chose never to repeat the details she heard from the witness box, those of the horrific crimes committed at Ravensbrück, but she spoke freely about her emotions and of what she felt then and in the latter years of her life. On December 1st, 1945, drawing his opening address to a close, the lead British prosecutor, Sir Hartley Shawcross, told the court at Nuremberg, "The governments of the United Kingdom and the British Commonwealth, of the United States of America and of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics and of France, backed by and on behalf of every other peace-loving nation of the world, have therefore joined to bring the inventors and perpetrators of this Nazi conception of international relationship before this tribunal. They do so that these defendants may be punished for their crime. They do so also that their conduct may be exposed in its naked wickedness, and they do so in the hope that the conscience and good sense of the world will see the consequences of such conduct and the end to which inevitably it must always lead. Let us once again restore sanity, and with it also the sanctity of our obligations towards each other."